Today I want to show you very simply how Germany has reduced its emissions since 2005. The respective contributions from renewables, reduced energy demand and fuel switching. I will compare these with the EU average and the leading country for each sector so we can see what Germany can learn from them. The analysis generally confirms the steps which the government is currently taking in respect of carbon pricing and renewables growth rates, but it also raises serious questions about the realism of its strategy. In this first chart, there are two important messages. Firstly, that most of the emissions reduction has taken place in the power sector, and secondly, that Germany has only reduced its emissions by slightly more than half the EU average. The UK is the clear leader, achieving its reductions through a wide range of strong measures across different sectors. Germany's progress in the building sector has been at the EU average level, but it failed seriously in industry and transport. This second chart shows how the emission reductions have been achieved. Looking at the right-hand legend, from the top down, we can see the different drivers. Fuel switching, both within the final energy sector and power sectors, then final energy demand reduction, followed by renewables, where the vertical arrows show their gross contribution. Underneath we see two offsetting factors, reduced nuclear demand and increased power exports. The net reduction is shown with the black diamond. Fuel switching has played a small role, but the second element, reduced energy demand, has made a major contribution in the UK, but not in Germany. The overriding contribution from renewables, especially power-based, is abundantly clear. Germany is easily the front runner, and were it not for the compensating reduced nuclear generation, would actually have been the leading EU country. Power generation has been the target of much effort, and rightly so. These two figures show for the EU and Germany how much progress has been made and what still remains to be done. However, the final energy sectors account, even in Germany, for a significantly higher proportion of the emissions, and this is where the real effort must now begin. I want to show you in more detail how the three instruments have contributed to reducing emissions in the power and three final energy sectors. Figure 5 underlines again the central role of renewables. Fuel switching from coal to gas played only a small role. The replacement of coal by renewables was much more important. Reducing consumer demand contributed to cutting power emissions in the UK due to a strong energy efficiency policy. Germany had the aim to reduce power demand by 10% by 2020, but did not introduce effective instruments to this end. Turning to industry, we see that for the EU as a whole, fuel switching played an important role, but neither in Germany nor in the UK. The main means of reducing emissions in the EU and the UK was by lowering energy demand, whereas in Germany the demand grew as a result of rising industrial production. Conversely, in recent years the UK significantly reduced its heavy industry production, implicitly importing more products and thus transferring carbon emissions to the trading partners. Regarding transport, the EU and Germany have so far not reduced emissions. The two leading countries are Italy and Sweden, which both reduced their emissions by over 15%, but for totally different reasons. In Italy, the reduced energy demand, due to no net GDP growth over 13 years, was the main factor, whereas in Sweden, a very aggressive biofuels policy did the job. The country imported a high share of the biofuels, so it is unlikely that other larger countries could replicate their success. Within the building sector, At the EU level, fuel switching was the most important factor. Whilst Germany recorded more demand reduction than the EU average, no serious fuel switching took place, mainly because of the very high power prices. The two clear leaders in the sectors were France and then Sweden, with an astonishing 50% emissions reduction. Using statistical analysis, we estimated the respective contributions to reduced energy demand from GDP-driven increases, energy efficiency measures, and a third factor, global warming, which reduced the demand for space heating. In the power sector, efficiency improvements in end use were important, particularly in Denmark, but also in the UK, and outweighed the effect of growing GDP. Concerning buildings, global warming was a major factor reducing energy demand in the EU, Germany and France, but not in the UK, where average winter temperatures remained unchanged over 13 years. Germany did well in achieving higher emission reductions than the EU average and even beat the UK. Having put energy demand reduction under the microscope, I want briefly to do the same with fuel switching. At the EU level, most of this was from oil to electricity, whereas in Germany, it was rather from oil to gas. France and Sweden recorded particularly impressive moves away from fossil fuels to electricity and heat. The energy mixes as of 2017 are seen in figure 12, where those two countries with high electricity and heat shares are in a different league compared to the EU average and Germany. Before I conclude, I want to highlight two factors which are absolutely central in the fight to reduce emissions: the annual growth rate of renewable power and the price of electricity. As we see in figure 13, Germany is doing better than the EU average for renewables growth, with the annual trend at least moving upwards compared to the worrying decline for the EU average. However, this rate is a long way from the two leaders, Denmark and the UK. Figure 14 shows household power prices and the big disadvantage which Germany faces compared to leaders such as Sweden and France is all too clear. I now summarise the key messages. Renewables power is by far the single most important factor in decarbonisation, and in Germany it has to do the additional task of replacing further nuclear plants to be closed. Energy demand reduction is making hardly any net contribution, with efficiency measures barely offsetting the GDP-driven demand growth. The recent introduction of a carbon price, starting at 25 euros a tonne, is a step in the right direction, but needs to be compared with a much more effective 100 euros a tonne price in Sweden. Fuel switching follows renewables power as a second most important means of reducing emissions in most countries, but it depends critically upon the competitiveness of electricity, and in this respect Germany has a great deal of ground to make up. Various energy demand targets set 10 years ago by the German government have been widely missed, and I fear that this phenomenon will be repeated by 2030. Therefore, I plead with policymakers for honesty in setting the targets. They should look realistically at how much renewable power can be produced nationally, and not make extravagant assumptions about importing either clean power or hydrogen, upon which the current decarbonisation strategy seems to depend far too heavily. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I've brought you some new and valuable insights, and look forward to your questions and comments.